God, I ask that your Holy Spirit speak through me. I ask it in your name and for your sake. Amen. The study of history reveals a great deal about the nature of propaganda. History is written by the victor. The best way to destroy a people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history. You can sway 1,000 men by appealing to their appetites faster than you can persuade one man by logic. If you don't think in the past you've been influenced by the media and the propaganda of Madison Avenue and advertising, think again. History is written by the victor, and so many people learn in school that Columbus discovered America in 1492. But how can you discover a land that has 6 million Native Americans living there before you? So the purpose of history and other subjects you learn in public school today is to indoctrinate, creating a nation of compliant workers and not thinkers, not people who question the status quo. They develop people who know just enough to be employable by multinational corporations, but are left by media and by the public educational system ignorant and complacent enough to have no desire to question the status quo. They enter a workforce in which they are like Whitney's interchangeable part, one day moved out for the new. If one's different, one's bound to be lonely. In the early part of this century, education began to change. People like John D. Rockefeller, who created the General Education Board in the early 1900s, wanted a nation of workers and not thinkers. He believed the aim of public education should no longer be to spread enlightenment, but simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, a compliant workforce, to put down dissent and originality. Through the 20th century, public school boards were more and more filled with psychiatrists and psychologists, from only 5,000 in 1970 to over 57,000 today. Why is this? Their job is to standardize those who graduate from the public school system. It could be argued to create a standardized citizenry, a compliant workforce, by medicating to put down dissent and originality. The reason for this significant increase in the number of school psychiatrists and psychologists since 1970 is to be the enforcement arm of John D. Rockefeller's plan to create a nation of workers and not original thinkers. Too many times, in my opinion, the public schools skillfully employ propaganda in their effort to affect behavior, to standardize those coming out of the public school system. The goal of curricula created by the growing number of psychiatrists and psychologists filling public school boards is to produce actions in those passing through the public school system to create attitudes favorable to compliance with the social, economic, and political goals of the multinational corporate interests who put leaders in and out of power. Learning appears to cease too many times at the age that a person leaves school. Why? Let's investigate the techniques of propaganda. Glittering generalities, transfer, name-calling, card stacking, testimonial, plain folks, and bandwagon. There is a perfect storm coming. Many believe America is gradually being dumbed down. The new SAT test is much easier than the older versions, yet SAT scores are much lower now than 40 years ago. And today the U.S. ranks far down the list in education compared with other industrialized nations. Like the Roman Emperor Vespasian's plan in 70 AD to build a Colosseum in which to stage events to distract the masses while working to build his empire. Similarly, today, movements are being created with propaganda attached to them, like sustainable development, climate change, Agenda 21, and the Great Reset, to distract the masses while the elites of this world eventually enslave them in the one world empire they are building. The quote-unquote perfect storm is coming because the more willfully ignorant people allow themselves to be, the more they are susceptible to the effect of propaganda. And propaganda, if skillfully employed by the wrong people, can hopelessly enslave those who falsely believe they are free and turn millions of men and women to a cruel hatred of others, as happened in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. I think the globalist agenda in this country that is working to destroy America as a nation and move it into a one-world government wants to make this country empirically, verifiably too uneducated and ignorant to continue as an independent sovereign nation. Jay Leno used to do a bit where he asked ordinary citizens questions people in the past used to consider common knowledge. Take a look at some of the answers given on a TikTok site called Project Better.
Who was the first person to land on the sun?
Lance
Armstrong is correct. What is the biggest city in the world?
I think it's like
Asia?
What is the biggest city in the world?
Europe.
If you were born in 2021, how old would you be?
21.
What country is Venice, Italy located in for $100? You have any clue?
Gosh, I'm going to be a teacher, so I should know this.
You should.
Paris?
Where is Queen Elizabeth from?
Egypt.
Egypt?
Egypt.
Where is it?
Brazil.
This country seems to have no education standards anymore. Too many times they'll let you out of a public high school and give too many people a diploma and they don't have to actually know anything. I watch political ads on TV and I wonder how these ads could work on people, and then I remember there are people who think people can land on the sun. They have two basic types of political ads. Positive ads, where you're seen with meeting with a teacher and students, a construction worker, a fireman, police officers, and so on. Then there's negative ads, the ones of political opponents, the ones used against political opponents, the ones that look like they're taken with night vision cameras, where you make your opponent look bad or suspicious like a criminal on an episode of Dateline. The next ad considers the public educational level of too many, and the general public has slipped enough where political candidates can get away with putting the positive and negative ads together.
8 times in a row, politician Greg Raths increased our tax rates and fees. Just like Biden and the liberals, Raths makes California unaffordable. Greg Raths even proposed raising his taxpayer salary over 60%. We pay more, he makes more. That's politician Greg Raths. But young Kim is fighting Raths and the liberals.
These ads use the propaganda technique of transfer above to convey they are the quote-unquote good guy because they are seen in the ad with good people like teachers and students, construction workers, firemen, policemen, and others. Another propaganda technique used in these ads is the glittering generality technique. For example, political candidates will say things in their ads like, quote, "I'm strong on values and good for jobs, and I'm fighting for you, and I'm on your side, and I'm gonna get things done and shake things up, and then I have a plan to clean things up," and so on. Similar to the campaign ads above, the elites use propaganda techniques in a problem reaction solution scenario to galvanize the masses to certain causes to further their agenda of enslaving us in a one-world totalitarian AI-ruled government. For example, multinational corporations create a problem. The problem is that over 70% of the world's pollution is caused by multinational corporations. Then they use propaganda campaigns on climate change, blaming the masses for the pollution problem, to get the masses as part of the Agenda 21 agenda to abandon rural and suburban areas and permanently move to human settlement zones in the future. Another example is multinational corporations build smarter and smarter AI to create a problem. Then they use propaganda campaigns such as the Great Reset, "You will own nothing and be happy," and the universal basic income to get people to totally depend on the government for income and one day accept the mark of the beast to get it. The following ads show how propaganda is being used today to accomplish Agenda 21 and lead people into a cashless digital prison of surveillance tyranny, which is enforced by AI. The first ad, "Stop climate change before it stops you," uses a propaganda technique of glittering generality and card stacking. Climate change is a vague general term. No one knows what it really means, so it's a glittering generality. This ad is also card stacking because some facts are given while omitting others. It is a fact that cutting down rainforests creates more CO2 and damages the atmosphere, but omits the fact that the climate change movement is also being used in Agenda 21 to get people to relinquish their land ownership and freedom so they can be moved into human settlement zones in the near future. The Greta Thunberg GQ cover uses the propaganda technique of testimonial, plain folks, and bandwagon. It uses the testimonial of someone who grew up in an ordinary family to mobilize millions to get on the climate change bandwagon being used in Agenda 21 to get people to give up their land and relocate to human settlement zones by 2040 or so. The Sustainable Development Goals UN ad uses the propaganda technique of transfer. This ad suggests if you're against sustainable development, you're for poverty. The World versus Virus ad from the World Economic Forum uses the propaganda technique of transfer. This ad suggests if you're not for the Great Reset, you don't want to help stop the coronavirus. The Animal Agriculture Leading Cause of Climate Change ad uses the propaganda technique of transfer. The ad suggests if you're for raising of livestock and eating steak and other meat, and against being a vegetarian and eating bugs, then you're against saving the planet. The How to Spot a Conspiracy ad uses the propaganda technique of transfer and name calling. This ad associates people with the negative term conspiracy theorist and suggests people who question the status quo are nuts. The following universal basic income ad uses the propaganda technique of transfer because the ad suggests if you are against UBI, then you are against helping others advance in life. The following benefits of AI in healthcare ad uses the propaganda technique of card stacking. This ad gives some and omits other facts. It sells the benefits of DNA editing like immunity to disease, but admits that a person's DNA is God's book, Psalm 139:16, and editing DNA rewrites that person's DNA so that it is now the devil's book and no longer God's book. The following Neuralink ad uses the propaganda technique of card stacking. This ad gives but omits other facts. It sells the benefit of convenience, but doesn't say that with the implant they will one day be able to read your thoughts. The quote-unquote "My Hand is the Key" ad uses the propaganda technique of testimonial, plain folks, and bandwagon. This testimonial ad uses ordinary people, plain folks, to sell the idea of getting a chip for convenience, subliminally suggesting you should get on the bandwagon with others and accept a chip. Central banks like the Bank of International Settlements, the Bank of England, and the Federal Reserve Bank are implementing a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. They use propaganda, selling the benefits, such as security and convenience, to further their agenda to move to a cashless society, where people can be monitored all the time, assigned a social credit score, shutting people's bank account down if they protest, their every conversation observed. They'll put an expiration date on your money to force people to spend or limit the types of things that the funds they deposit may be used to buy. The World Economic Forum says digital currencies will be a lot like a digital banknote. Think about this carefully. In that house or apartment that you live in, the propaganda of the Great Reset says you'll own nothing and be happy. They say it can currently be used alongside any physical notes and coins you have. But you've got to think about it. That is until they phase out cash. Then if you start any little trouble or protest, you'll go to your bank one day and say, "Oh, where's my money gone?" And they'll tell you your digital bank account is locked and won't be opened again until you're a little more cooperative. I have one question. Slowly our liberties are being taken away through executive orders and other means. Wouldn't the powers that be tempted to use this digital money cashless system to implement control using social credit type systems, or shut down bank accounts of people they disagree with, or control people through a surveillance network developed in conjunction with big tech and a financial arm they're developing through CBDC so that they can lockstep and gridlock people in a cashless digital prison of surveillance tyranny enforced by AI? This is why they want physical money to disappear in the binary code. The question that we should be asking, in my opinion, is at what point does free speech make someone a target in this new system? God, I hope something I said helps someone else. In your name and for your sake, amen.